He is a professor of history at Trinity University, and he is a frequent guest here on KSAT Q&A. He's also an author, an ordained minister, and he, jack of all trades.
We got a few things to talk about.
Yeah, a Carey of all trades. Dr. Carey Lattimore joins us now. His latest book is called Unshakable Faith, African American Stories of Redemption, Hope, and Community. Carey, always appreciate you joining us on this segment. Talk about this book and why you decided to write it, and what does unshakable faith mean?
This book really is kind of picking off of my two vocations, one as, a professor and the other as a minister of the gospel. And so putting those two together means a lot to me. But I also wanted to write something that was hopeful, something that gave people an idea of the benefits of faith, the strong parts of faith, and what faith can really do in people's lives. And so the people who are profiled here, in a sense, demonstrated what I call an unshakable faith. Now, that doesn't mean that they didn't question the faith, they didn't have difficulties, they didn't struggle, they didn't wrestle with it, but ultimately they relied on a faith that was unshakable, a faith that was a rock. And so from people from Booker T. Washington to Cyrus Bustle to Phyllis Wheatley, and up to Fannie Lou Hamer, we see in the stories here how faith helped to sustain. And so faith can help people sustain things such as depression. I know that personally. Faith can help people to sustain difficult times in life, physical ailments. And so I hope that the book shows the positive aspects of faith in a time period of where sometimes all we hear is the negative aspects of faith. And I have to admit, sometimes people of faith haven't always been their best proponents in the ways that they act, in the ways that they behave. But I think in this book, one of the things that I try to show is how people of faith can really do good things and to do the will of God.
Where did this idea come from for you? And how did you choose the people that you decided to profile in this book?
The idea really came from something that I've always been wanting to do. I've always wanted to do something that combined those two vocations of being a historian and also being a minister. And I always felt that there was a way of doing it that could be historically accurate, but could also talk about it in a faith perspective. The people that I chose, I wanted to choose a diversity of people. I wanted to choose from a time period that had people from the colonial period up until the present. And so we talk about a lot of people in the present as well. And we talk about people from the 18th century, from Phyllis Wheatley on up. But to also find really good stories, historical stories, stories that challenge me as a historian and how to put it together, but also stories that challenge me as a person of faith and how people can wrestle with their faith, but ultimately come to a good place in it, in their faith.
So there are some names that in this, Harriet Tubman, Booker T. Washington, I'm kind of familiar with. Phyllis Wheatley, is that Wheatley Heights kind of what we're talking about? And even Duke Ellington. I mean, obviously I'm familiar with, well, not obviously, but I am familiar with Duke Ellington, but I don't think of him necessarily, I think of him as a big band jazz artist. I don't necessarily think of him as a man of faith.
Yes, for Duke Ellington, one of the things that we don't often think about is that towards the end of his life, he did what we call 3 sacred concerts, and he was an expression of his faith. And so it was an important aspect of his life. And towards the end of his life, he explored that in his own works. For Phyllis Wheatley, we think of her as a great poet, but if you read her poetry, you really see the strength in her faith and how that faith kind of helped her through a difficult childhood. I mean, this is a woman who was separated from her family as a child. And we see her working with her faith, developing her faith in her poetry as a way of dealing with those difficulties and a way of her finding acceptance for herself and also acceptance and forgiveness for the situation that got her there and finding contentment in her own life.
Despite talk about the traffic and the shopping, this is a faithful season for a lot of different people across a lot of different religions. So do you think that has any more significance, this book coming out during this season, this time of year?
I love the fact that the book is coming out in this season. I wasn't expecting it to be. I was thinking it was going to come out in January. And so it was pushed out a little bit earlier. I like that idea because this season is something special to me. And I think for people of faith, and I mean, for me, the season really exemplifies how, for me, and this is my own faith, the idea of humility. So for me, this season is celebrating how God becomes man and humbles himself, and experiences what life is like us. And so that's a message, I think, to all of us, that perhaps we can find ways to humbling ourselves, think about putting ourselves in the situations of others and living in other people's shoes. In other words, being our brother's keeper. And so for me, that's kind of what this season is about. And I hope that that's what this book, Unshakable Faith, is about, to bring people together, to talk about ways that we can come together, talk about an ecumenical faith, talk about the things that we share together, and to enjoy the beauty of this season together as one people.
It's really a story about faith. I mean, they're African-American stories, but it's a story more about faith that really everybody
Exactly.
should
Connects
be
a lot
able
of
to
us. Yeah.
It's just a perspective, but we're all included in that as well.
Yeah.
Before we let
absolutely.
you go, where can people find this book?
You can pick it up on Amazon. It can also be found on our Daily Bread Publishers website. You can go to, I think it's on the Walmart website, Target website. You can also go to your local bookstores and they can order it for you. Ordering it online right now is the easiest way to get it. And I hope you do. And I hope you also enjoy the season.
Unshakable Faith by Carrie Lattimore. Thanks as always for being here with us.
Thank you so much and have a happy holidays.
I'm going to say I knew you win, once this goes to the bestseller list. Dr. Carrie Lattimore, have a great season. We'll be right back.